Welcome to the Beyond Bloated Podcast. I'm Carly, a certified health coach helping women ditch their bloat without having to follow super strict and stressful protocols. As someone who's struggled with all sorts of digestive issues for over 5 years, I know exactly how you're feeling. I also know that there's a way to feel better, and it doesn't have to involve tons of expensive supplements and insanely restrictive diets. Join me as I share all of my bloat-busting wisdom to help you say goodbye to that bloated belly and regain your confidence. It's time for you to move beyond bloated. Are you familiar with the phrase, test, don't guess? It basically means that you should get tested before trying to address any gut issues or problems that you think you may have to ensure that you actually have that problem before you go ahead and try fixing it. I see a lot of wellness practitioners preaching this saying, test, don't guess. And I'm a little on the fence about it, honestly, because these tests are hella expensive. If we're trying to get all the tests done to see if we have all the things, we're talking thousands of dollars. And not everyone has that kind of money. So basically, are we saying if you can't afford to do all the tests to make sure you have the things, then we can't address your issue because we don't know if you have it? I don't think that's a great message. The tests that I'm talking about, by the way, are like functional tests that you have to pay out of pocket for. Like you can go and get your blood work done, at least here in Canada. And if it's basic blood work, it'll be covered. That's fine. Go get that done. No issue. But if you have gut issues, blood work probably isn't enough to figure out what the culprit is. So things like a GI map or the organic acids test or a SIBO breath test, all these things are not covered. So you're paying out of pocket for all of these things. And a lot of the times the symptoms for these issues like candida overgrowth, SIBO, dysbiosis, the symptoms overlap. So it's not obvious which one you have, which is why the saying test, don't guess comes into play, because people might think they have one thing and then it turns out it's actually something else with very similar symptoms. So I understand the concept, but to get all these tests done, it's going to cost you a fortune. When it comes down to it, a lot of the issues that these tests will reveal for you can be improved the same way by balancing the microbiome and sealing up that gut lining. Most of the methods that we would use to do this are harmless. Things like eating more mindfully, consuming more probiotic-rich foods and less ultra-processed meals, managing your stress, and exercising regularly aren't going to put you in danger. And these are all things that are going to help improve your gut health. So I guess my stance on the matter is if you have already tried the basics, like all those things I just listed, and you still feel like something is wrong, maybe then it's time to do some testing. But then the question becomes, what tests should I do? Because as I said earlier, these tests are expensive. So it's not like you're going to put down your life savings and be like, let's do them all. I don't think that's even necessary. So luckily for you, I was the person who was doing everything right and I was still experiencing issues. So I've done a lot of different tests. I'm also a math nerd. I have a math degree. I like data. I like hard facts. So a lot of these tests appealed to me because I wanted the data in front of my face. So in this episode, I'm going to give my honest take on whether or not each of the tests that I did was worth it to help you decide where to spend your hard-earned money. I'm going to try to present these in the order that I ended up doing them, but it's been a long 6 years, so it may be slightly out of order, but it's generally accurate. Okay, so starting off at the very beginning of my gut health journey, rewinding about 6 years. If you want to hear the full story, hit up episode 2 where I unveil my gut health journey, but I'm going to start at the point I started doing testing. My gut was super wacky all of a sudden. It seemed like every time I ate, I was having extreme gut pain, explosive diarrhea, lots of problems, and I didn't understand why, because I had tried eliminating gluten, didn't help. Then I tried eliminating dairy, didn't help. So I was like, this sucks. I don't know what the problem is. and I knew about food sensitivity testing, but I don't like blood or needles, so I didn't want to go that route. Instead, I found a different test right around the corner from where I lived at the time, and they did a food sensitivity testing using an acupuncture point on your finger that corresponds to food sensitivities. So this test was called EDS, electrodermal sensitivity screening. So I ended up doing that one, and I actually did it 3 times between 2018, which is when my gut issues started, and 2021. So I basically did it like once a year because I had heard that food sensitivities change, as you improve your gut health, like your food sensitivities should decrease. So I wanted to keep doing it to see, like, is this working? Am I eliminating food sensitivities? Is my gut getting better? So I kept doing the test 3 times. This test cost me about $300 each time, but it was covered by my benefits because I could list it under a naturopath appointment, and I had around like $500 a year to spend on that kind of stuff. So I didn't actually have to pay out of pocket for this test, but it used up more than half of my benefits for naturopaths and other things like that. When you do the test, it spits out this multiple page report that has, I think it was over 500 different foods, and there was a section for candida and heavy metals, things like that. And it basically gave a reading based on your reaction to it. So if it was highlighted red, it means like your body is responding negatively to that food. And my entire report was essentially red. So it was basically like, stop eating all foods. And that was also what my naturopath told me. She said, you need to stop eating these things and replace them with other things. And at that time, I was very unhealthy. So those were all the things that I ate. Like gluten and dairy obviously lit up on my list, but so did things like all of the sugars, different oils, even some fruits and vegetables. Like it was lit up red. So I had a panic and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to eat. I'm going to die, starve to death. It was not a good time for me. After getting the results of the test, I did cut out gluten and dairy together, and that did help my gut issues to some degree. I will say it also helped me realize things like canola oil and brown sugar were triggers for me at that time. I probably wouldn't have figured that out otherwise. Overall, I would say doing it the first time for me was beneficial because it gave me concrete evidence that gluten and dairy were an issue because I hadn't cut them out. I was in denial. And after I cut them out, I did feel better. I wasn't cured, but I felt better. And it also helped me discover a few other things, like I said, the brown sugar and canola oil, that I probably wouldn't have put together in my own mind because I didn't know anything about nutrition. Like I didn't know canola oil was inflammatory and things like that. So when I stopped eating those things, that also helped me feel better. But the advice that I got was stop eating these things indefinitely, and that's your problem. That was not helpful because I have since added back almost all of those foods on that list to some degree. Like I don't eat brown sugar very often, but if I go out to eat and there's a little bit of brown sugar in something, I'm now fine. Whereas I was told you can't have brown sugar anymore, so too bad for you. I also know there's some debate about whether or not food sensitivity testing is accurate. I will say based on my experience with this test, my results were accurate. I can say that the foods that were highlighted were an issue, but it's not because the foods were an issue. It's because my body was the issue. I just couldn't digest food. So getting this big list of foods that's showing my body is reacting negatively to was just, now looking back, an overall alert. It was like, hey, your body can't digest anything. It's not oranges that's causing the problem. It's your gut is leaking and can't digest food, period. My final take on food sensitivity testing, do I think it is necessary? No. If you can get it covered, sure, you can do it. It's not going to hurt, but take it with a grain of salt. If you get this massive list like I did, yeah, maybe you need to avoid those foods temporarily while you work on improving your gut health, but you can likely add them back in. I was given the wrong advice. I also didn't need to do the test 2 more times. I will say it did change slightly, but so what? It wasn't like life-changing information. It wasn't the key, like, oh, I know what's wrong with me now. It basically just told me, your gut is messed up and you're not digesting food. These specific foods are causing you a big problem. So I cut out a lot of them, and I cut them out for way too long because I wasn't given the right advice on how to improve my gut health and then add them back in. So after that whole meltdown situation where I found out I can't eat anything anymore, the naturopath that I was seeing recommended that I see a nutritionist at that same office. And this nutritionist did something called live blood analysis. What that means is she would prick my finger, get a little bit of blood, squeeze it out onto a little plate thing, and then look at that under a microscope. And then this was displayed on like a projector screen, so I could see what she was seeing. And she would like scroll through, look through my blood, and point out things. For example, when I did this, she saw, oh, you have, some parasites here. You have a lot of yeast in your blood. She could see undigested food particles because that is not supposed to be in your blood. And that's a sure sign of leaky gut syndrome. So that was actually very cool. I did this many times. Like, I don't even know how many times, like 5 different times. I will say that, again, I don't think I was given very good advice with this information. I had undigested food particles in the blood. And I'm pretty sure she said, oh, yeah, that's not supposed to be there. But I wasn't told that that indicates leaky gut and this is what you need to do to improve leaky gut syndrome. I was given like some supplements to get rid of the parasites. I ended up doing a candida cleanse because there was so much yeast in my blood. And then I'd go and it'd be like, oh, you have less yeast in your blood. And then I'd go back and it'd be like, oh, you have more yeast in your blood now. So I don't know. The results were cool. I liked seeing, the blobs on the screen in my blood and her telling me what that meant. But overall, like, it needs to be paired with good advice. I don't think I received that. It may have been more beneficial if I was working with someone who was able to tell me exactly what that meant and what I'm supposed to do. Because again, this was first year of my gut health journey. I don't know anything. I can't interpret this myself at that time. Luckily, this was also a test that I could claim under naturopath, dietitian, whatever. It was all grouped together. And I believe it was less than $100 each time I did it. Maybe it was around 85. That number comes to mind. I'm not positive. But either way, I was able to use my benefits for this. But I only had $500 a year. So if I'm using $300 for the sensitivity screening test, and then I'm using another $85 for the live blood analysis, I also had to pay like $85 for the follow-up appointment for the food sensitivity screening because they won't just send me my results. I have to book an appointment to talk to someone about it. I also had to do an initial consultation for them to be able to give me the sensitivity screening. So as you can probably tell, this all adds up to over $500 in a year. So I did have to pay out of pocket, I'm sure, for some of these things, but about $500 a year was covered for these tests. My overall opinion on the live blood analysis, yes, it was cool. Did it give me any life-changing information? I'm going to say no. I don't think it's necessary. If you want to do it and you can get it covered, same as the food sensitivity screening, sure, go for it. But it did not resolve my issues. Like, even when I found I had parasites and I took the supplements to get rid of the parasites, I went back and it was confirmed that they were gone. It wasn't like, oh, I'm all better now. It didn't really change my life. Again, it was just another confirmation that I had a messed up gut. The undigested food particles in my blood indicated leaky gut. The excessive amount of yeast in my blood indicated a candida overgrowth. These were all things that I could have deduced from just not being able to digest anything anymore. So was it absolutely necessary to do this? No, it was not. Over the next few years, I continued to do these tests sporadically. Like I said, I did the sensitivity screening 3 different times within a 3-year span. I also did the live blood analysis, I don't know, once, twice a year. I eventually decided to do hair analysis. I don't even know what sparked me to do this, honestly. I feel like my mom and I talked about it. I don't know, one of us saw it online and was like, oh, cool, a hair analysis. And it wasn't very expensive, wasn't covered. I want to say it was less than $100. So we were like, yeah, let's do this hair analysis and see what it tells us. All you had to do was pull a few hairs out of your head, throw them in an envelope, and you had to fill out, I think, a form with your information, and then you send it in. And then they send you back a report, and the report had food intolerances, non-food intolerances, nutritional deficiencies, metals toxicity, gut biome, and hormone imbalance. Those were the different sections in the report. I did this test in 2019. It was about a year after my gut issues started. And when I looked through my food intolerances, it was pretty random. One of the foods listed as me having an extreme negative reaction to was arugula. Very random. There was also gluten and dairy, like wheat flour, rye. Those were all in there. But also things like clove and acai berry. Things that I literally didn't even eat were on the list. I don't know how accurate this was, honestly. Yes, the gluten and dairy was accurate, but other things like pineapple, I didn't notice the problem when I ate pineapples, so questionable for sure. There was also the non-food intolerances, also pretty random. Chlorine and dust were on there. Walnut tree, I don't know if this was like indicating seasonal allergies or what. Hey everyone, Carly here. If you are tired of feeling bloated and uncomfortable, which I know you are, I have something that can really help. My free ultimate guide to bloat busting. I've been there myself, and I know how frustrating it is to try super restrictive diets and expensive supplements without getting results. If those methods were going to work, they would have worked by now. That's why I created this guide to offer you a different approach. In the ultimate guide to bloat busting, you'll learn techniques to listen to your body and eat with intention, avoiding overeating and choosing foods that truly benefit you, tips for proper hydration to support digestion and reduce bloating, a guide to delicious foods that promote a healthy gut and how to easily incorporate them into your meals, and effective methods to manage stress, which plays a huge role in gut health. These simple, practical strategies can make a big difference in your daily life, helping you feel lighter, more energized, and comfortable in your own skin. Ready to ditch the bloat without strict diets or costly supplements? Download your free copy today at beyondbloated.com/ultimate-guide and start your journey to a bloat-free life. Now, let's get back to it. Pretty random. Again, I can't say if this was accurate or not. I didn't really look into it. The report also listed several nutritional deficiencies that I supposedly had, as well as metal toxicity. So nickel and tin showed up, and it said, these are the heavy metals you have shown a sensitivity after being exposed to. I don't even know what that means. The weirdest part was the gut biome test page had nothing on it. It said you have shown no anomalies for this section and therefore have no results. And this is the page that's supposed to show like if you are lacking good gut bacteria. And considering this was a year into my gut issues, and I haven't really done a whole lot to correct the problem, there's no way I didn't have any problems here. Like, I did a GI map, which I'm going to talk about later, and I had no akkermansia, 0. So why isn't that on here? I don't know. I am questioning the accuracy of this for sure. The hormone imbalance page did suggest I have an imbalance in estrogen, which would make sense because I was on hormonal birth control at that time, and I had been for many years. So that actually made sense. That's one of the few things on this results page that actually makes sense looking back. And then the final page was digestive health and metabolism analysis. Again, I had no results. It's saying that my digestive health and my metabolism is great. That's a lie. I know that's a lie. So overall, no, this was definitely not worth it. I would actually say this was probably the least useful test that I did out of all of them. This one gave me results that I can't even verify were accurate or not. I'm leaning towards no. And even if they are, like, there were no helpful tips as to what to do about it. So, for example, the page that said, you have a hormone imbalance. It's like, okay, yeah, you have a hormone imbalance with estrogen. Moving on. So, I mean, obviously, you probably are supposed to work with someone who knows things when you get this done. But I could just buy this myself on the internet, which is what I did. It got sent directly to me. I just kind of looked it over and I was like, okay, cool. What does this mean? And now looking back, knowing what I know, I'm saying this is probably extremely useless. Maybe there are other hair analysis tests that are better. I don't know a whole lot about them, to be completely honest. I'm going to say the one that I did, not useful, not worth it, do not recommend. So I did that test in 2019, and I was also continuing to do the EDS test and the live blood analysis after that. And I was very focused on Candida at that time because the sensitivity test also showed a Candida reading, and mine was very high. So it was indicating that I had a Candida overgrowth, and I started doing a lot of research into Candida overgrowth. What does it mean? I had a lot of the symptoms. So I was very set on, I have a Candida overgrowth. I need to do a Candida cleanse. And I spent a lot of time doing that. So I kind of paused on the testing besides I kept doing live blood analysis and I kept doing the EDS test between 2018 and 2021. Candida cleanse did help some of my symptoms. So I remember feeling like I had more energy and I wasn't tired all the time. And my seasonal allergies actually went away. So that was really cool. But I was still bloated. I was still having constipation. I wasn't cured. So then I went back into my internet searching and I was like, hey, what the hell's wrong with me? I ended up reading a book called The Bloated Belly Whisperer. And at the beginning of the book, there is a quiz that you take, and it's asking about your symptoms, your past health history, and then it points you to specific chapters based on your answers. And mine went hard to SIBO, the SIBO chapter. Up until this point, I didn't know what SIBO was. I have been seeing a naturopath and a nutritionist for 3 years. No one ever mentioned SIBO to me. So I end up reading this chapter on SIBO, and I was like, holy shit, this is me to a T. Like, this is my life, you know? No matter what I eat, I get bloated, I get gassy, and it's not pleasant smelling. All of these things that I was reading, I was like, yep. So then I started my research on SIBO. The way to officially get diagnosed with SIBO is through a breath test. I decided I would try to get this breath test through a medical doctor so that I didn't have to pay out of pocket for it. Big mistake. I made the appointment. It was one of those telehealth appointments, and she basically told me I was delusional. I'm probably just lacking nutrients because I don't drink cow's milk. What a joke. Literally infuriating. One of the most infuriating conversations I've ever had to date. So I hung up on her, and then I was like, okay, I'm not dealing with this. This is causing me stress. So I did research online, and I found a website where you can order your own SIBO test. It gets shipped to your house. You complete it at home, ship it back, and then they send your results to a practitioner that you're working with. So they won't send them directly to you, but I still had a naturopath. So I emailed my naturopath and I was like, hey, I'm buying this SIBO test. I'm going to do it. And then they're going to send you the results. And she was like, cool. The worst part about doing a SIBO breath test is the prep diet. So the day before you're going to do the test, you can't eat anything that's going to cause fermentation in your gut, which is essentially everything. The only things I could eat was plain white rice, plain eggs, plain white bread, which I couldn't eat because I am gluten intolerant. You can season with salt and pepper a little tiny bit. You can have water. I think that was actually it. Like, those were the only things I could eat the day before. And I am a hungry girl. I love eating. Misery. Literally such a terrible day. Then the next day, the test takes 3 hours to complete. So you can't eat during this whole time period. So I'm starving from the day before, and then I have to go 3 hours in the morning while completing this test, and I still can't eat. It was not fun. Honestly, one of the worst test preps that I've done. The morning of the test, you can't eat anything, drink anything other than like a little bit of water. And then you drink a solution of lactulose, and then you do like a breath sample. So you breathe into these tubes. And then every 20 minutes, you breathe into these tubes and you write your numbers down with the time. And you do this for 3 hours. And then you package it up, ship it off, and they send your results to your practitioner. My naturopath sent the results to me, so then I could see I tested positive for methane dominant SIBO. And I was like, wow, great. This is the answer to everything. Like, I haven't known what's wrong with me, and now I do. I have methane dominant SIBO. Woohoo. So I booked an appointment with my naturopath to like discuss with her, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do about it? Ultimately, didn't really get me anywhere. My naturopath just had me taking all these different herbs and stuff. It didn't help. It didn't get rid of the SIBO. I actually ended up getting rid of my methane dominant SIBO, but I did that myself just like last year. I did this test in 2021. So yes, it was cool to know that I had SIBO because I had thought I had SIBO and then I was right. But it's not easy to get rid of SIBO. And I'm kind of learning that SIBO is also a bit of a symptom of other issues. For example, if you have low stomach acid and you get rid of SIBO, SIBO can come right back because your stomach acid is supposed to prevent the overgrowth from happening. So there are a lot of components involved that I was not made aware of at that time. So I just kept trying to kill the SIBO with different herbs. It wasn't working. And eventually I ended up doing a ton of research and figured it out on my own. I also bought a breath tester, the Air 2, which I've talked about on Instagram before, but it's basically like a SIBO test in your pocket because this SIBO test that I bought online cost me over $200, by the way. So if you're going to keep retesting like you're supposed to after you treat SIBO, you're supposed to do a test to see if it's gone, repeat. That's way too many tests. So I ended up buying this Air 2 device, which was about $300, I think. And it's just like an unlimited SIBO test. My general consensus on SIBO breath tests, yes, I think they are accurate. I think they can help you determine if you have SIBO and which type, which is important because treatment is going to vary depending on which type. But I also don't think a SIBO diagnosis is going to resolve all your issues. I got a SIBO diagnosis in 2021. And I didn't get rid of my SIBO until like 2023, or even it might have been 2024, earlier this year. So it's not like a miracle diagnosis that's like, oh, I just have SIBO, I just have to get rid of that. There's often a lot of other problems that are happening inside of your body that's causing the SIBO. And if you even are able to get rid of it, it's just going to come right back unless you address those other issues. I also don't think it's sustainable to continue testing for SIBO when it's like $200 to $400 each test. That's insane. And you're supposed to do it every time you treat it. And if it's not gone, you treat it again and you test again. And even if you do get rid of it, SIBO has a very high reoccurrence rate. So now you're testing again to see if it's come back when you start getting symptoms again, and then you repeat. It's insane. That's why I bought the Air 2 device. If you are dealing with a very stubborn case of SIBO and you're not able to get rid of it, and you're retesting, the Air 2 device is more worth it, in my opinion, than continuing to buy breath test after breath test. After I was done treating SIBO, I was like, yes, I'm going to be all better. Wrong. Still not great. So I decided the next test I was going to do, a GI map. I'd heard about GI maps before, but they're very expensive. And I just kept putting it off because I was like, no, it's Candida. No, it's SIBO. No, it's this. But I kept hearing like, GI map gives you all the answers. GI map is so detailed and will tell you exactly what's wrong with your gut. So I was at that point where I was like, all right, I'm paying the money. I believe it was like $600. And I got the GI map done. A GI map is a poop test. You take a sample of your poop and you send it to the lab, and they send you back a very detailed report all about your gut microbiome. Included in the report that you get back are pathogens, bacterial, parasitic, and viral. If you have H. pylori and what virulence factors they have, commensal keystone bacteria, which is your good gut bacteria, opportunistic and overgrowth microbes. So these are things that are disrupting your gut, probably. If you have any fungi or yeast like Candida, and again, this is just in your large intestine. So if you have Candida overgrowth elsewhere in the body, it's not going to show up here. It also shows any viruses that might be present, parasites, and your intestinal health markers. Diagnostic Solutions Laboratory is where I got this test from. So if you go to their website, they have a sample report on the site where you can look and see what is included in your results if you're really interested. There's way too much stuff on there for me to go through every single thing. I just gave you like the headers of each section, but it's very, very detailed. I did this in 2023. Like I said, it was like $600. I do wish that I did this before anything else. This test would have been a great place for me to start because it tells you like your good gut bacteria levels. So if you're very low in some of those, then you can specifically take a probiotic for that microbe instead of just taking a generic probiotic that's covering whatever bases. My results also heavily indicate that I have low stomach acid, which is probably why when I eat, I get bloated, and why I had SIBO and I couldn't get rid of it and it kept coming back, and all these other symptoms that I had. And I still do have a few symptoms. These are things that I'm now just becoming aware of because of this test. Like nobody mentioned low stomach acid to me before. And even when I got this test done in 2023, I went to see a naturopath, 2 different naturopaths, and I showed them these results, and neither one of them brought up low stomach acid to me. It's actually just in the last few months that I've relooked at all my results, and I'm like, this is very clearly low stomach acid. I need to work on improving my stomach acid. And so here I am, 2024, fixing problems from tests that I took over a year ago. After listening to myself talk throughout this episode, I'm realizing that the issue isn't necessarily with the testing, it's with interpreting the tests. The average person does not have the knowledge to interpret these tests themselves. If you order a GI map and you get the results, there's a lot of information here. It's not clear. Like one of the sections is anti-gliadin IgA. The average person isn't going to have a clue what the hell that means. So if you don't have knowledge in gut health or any sort of holistic health, medical health, whatever, you're not going to have a clue what any of this means. So you need to work with somebody. Even if you do work with somebody, that person needs to be good at what they do. I have seen 4 different naturopaths, a nutritionist, I've seen a SIBO specialist. I have seen so many different practitioners, medical doctors. Nobody helped me as much as I helped myself. I did the research. I went and got the education. I listened to the podcast. I read the books. I did everything myself because I wanted to fix my problems. These practitioners, I don't think know enough. I think they mean well. I think they want to help. I think they have a general knowledge on health, but they're not specialized. And the issue is a lot of them didn't face these problems themselves. I remember when I was doing my Candida cleanse, I was seeing a naturopath and a nutritionist. And they were like, yeah, do the cleanse, take these supplements. And I was like, oh, what about when you did it? And they're like, oh, I've never done that. It's like, what? Someone's telling me to do the things, take the stuff, and they've never done it themselves. It's just such a whole different level of understanding when you have been through it, when you have done the protocols, when you have done the diets, when you have done the research and you've experienced the symptoms and you've come out the other side. You get it. You get it, and you're able to help so much more. So I think, like I said, these practitioners, holistic, they mean well, and they have a general knowledge, but they aren't specialized unless they have been through the things themselves. I have been through the things. I have been through so many of the things, and I have done extensive research on all of it because I hate feeling like shit. So I don't want to feel that way. I try my best to not, and I will go to the ends of the earth to not feel that way. And because I've experienced it myself, I get how you feel. I know what it's like. And I hate that for you. I truly just want you to feel better. So if you want help from someone who has been there, someone who has spent thousands of dollars on tests, if you're keeping track, I am your girl. Please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, send me an email, send me a text, join my email list. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one, I am accepting new clients. You can do that through my website. There are many ways that I can help you, and I want to help you. So please help yourself. Let me help you. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Beyond Bloated podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to share this podcast with your fellow gut goddesses. If you'd like to chat about today's episode, send me a DM on Instagram at beyond.bloated. Until next time, bye!